Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club. Tonight we're diving into the solo version of Fate of the Fellowship, the cooperative adventure game from Z-Man Games that puts you right in the middle of a desperate quest across Middle-earth. This game is designed by Matt Leacock. I know him best as the designer of the board game The Thunderbirds, which I've covered on the channel previously, but many of you will recognize him from his popular design, Pandemic. In this video, we're going to look at the components, and then I'll guide you through the solo setup, where I'll examine the core mechanics and show you how a round of play unfolds, so you can jump into your first game with confidence. The game board depicts a portion of Middle-earth divided into 11 regions. Near the name of each region, there may be some symbols that will indicate the starting position of Nazgul and the Eye of Sauron. An example of which is in Eriador. We have the Eye of Sauron symbol and 2 Nazgul symbols. Those are only used during the setup of the game. Each region on the board contains several locations. Each location will have one or more colored battle paths or white normal paths leading from them. An example is in Eric. We have a location and there is a white path leading off towards Edoras, and then these battle paths that are leading in and out of Eric. These paths will control character movement and allow the game's AI to control the movement of the shadow forces using the colored battle paths. Some special locations are labeled as havens or shadow strongholds. Example of a haven is Minas Tirith, and it has that yellow perimeter around the location. A stronghold, a shadow stronghold, such as Minas Morgul, is in a red border, and those are considered to be havens and strongholds. The control of these locations aid in the defense of the location and can affect the hope track. Some travel paths are special paths, and they require a greater effort for the forces of the Free Peoples to cross. An example of which is this path that leads from Isengard into the Fanghorn Forest. You'll notice there is a symbol there on that white path. And that symbol, in this case being a stealth symbol, requires the payment of 1 stealth, either using a card with a stealth symbol or a stealth token. And those special paths might include using friendship symbols, stealth, or resistance. Now, to win the game, the Free Peoples must complete a predetermined number of objectives, culminating with the objective Destroy the One Ring. That means that Frodo and Sam will have to travel from the Shire and travel to Mount Doom and perform that final objective to win. The Free Peoples can lose the game if the hope track reaches the 0 space, representing that Frodo and Sam have lost the will to continue with their quest. The hope track will begin the game on space 6, as indicated by the dot within the circle. Hope can be lost through various game functions, but the primary mechanism will be by the shadow claiming the haven locations on the map. The game comes with 13 character figures. These are double-sided and screen printed, representing important members of the Free Peoples. These include all of the iconic characters from the book and films, including Frodo and Sam, Merry and Pippin, Aragorn, Gandalf, Boromir, Gimli, Legolas, Galadriel, and Gollum. along with some of the lesser known characters like Arwen, Eomer, Eowyn, and Faramir. In the solo game, the player will control Frodo and Sam, along with 4 random characters. Each character has 1 or more special abilities that can be used to aid the Free Peoples in their quest. In addition to the character tokens, there are meeples that will represent friendly and shadow troops. Friendly troops consist of the forces of the dwarves, the gray pieces, the elves, the green, the Rohirrim, brown, and the Gondorians, blue. All of the Shadows troops will be represented by the red meeples. The game comes with 74 player cards, which include 48 region cards, 14 events, and 12 Skies Darkened cards. Other decks include a 24-card objective deck, 10 reference cards, and 50 shadow cards. Other components include 3 battle dice and 7 search dice, along with a threat marker, hope marker, a solo token, and the infamous Eye of Sauron marker. Our cardboard components include stronghold tokens and symbol tokens. The solo game consists of a single sheet and uses the rules as written with only minor changes, which is very much appreciated by me. And what Lord of the Rings game would be complete without the 9 Nazgul? These are featured on stands that give them some elevation off the map board. And finally, the game comes with its own dice tower, modeled after the Tower of Barad-dûr. It has to be assembled, and they give you complete instructions on how to do it, and the beauty of this tower is it can be disassembled into 3 pieces and stored in special areas within the game box, and it works very nice. We begin the setup by laying out the game board. We place the hope marker on its starting space, indicated by the circle in the center, on the 6th space. The hope track will monitor Frodo's morale. If it ever gets to 0, he goes into despair and will lose the game. Next, we'll place the threat rate marker on its starting space. It goes on the 2 part of the track. This track will monitor the threat rate that Sauron believes he's in, based upon actions in the game. As the threat rate goes up, Sauron will become more aggressive and will be drawing more and more shadow cards per turn. Now we're going to create our shadow deck. Shadow deck has 50 cards in it. It also includes 2 special cards which are going to be set aside during setup. We have the Wheels of Saruman and the Drums of War. These cards are going to start the game in the discard pile, and we'll place them there. The other 48 cards will be shuffled and placed in the draw area. You'll notice that the shadow cards have 2 different backs on them. One is the eye symbol, and the other is the banner. The card that is showing up on the top of the draw deck will tell us which action on the card to resolve. As an example, if we drew this Moria Minas Tirith card, this card, which is in the draw deck, is the banner. We're going to be resolving the lower portion of the card. If it was a banner card, then we would resolve the upper portion of the card. Step 4 is to place our starting troops, the Eye of Sauron and the Nazgul, on the map. The Eye of Sauron will begin in Eriador. He received information from Gollum about hobbits and the Shire, so his focus is on Eriador. In addition, 2 Nazgul will begin there as well. So we'll place 2 Nazgul tokens in that region. The Nazgul are going to affect searches. And then we populate the board with the additional Nazgul. There's going to be 1 in Rhudaur, 1 in the Misty Mountains, 1 in Gondor, and 4 in Mordor. And now with the Nazgul deployed, we'll move on to adding our troops into the locations listed on page 4. We'll begin with the dwarves, and we place 1 in Ered Luin, another in Erebor, up in Dale, and finally 1 in the Iron Hills. The remaining dwarves will go in the dwarf holding box in the upper left-hand corner of the box. If we've set up the game correctly, there should be a total of 5 of those troops in each of the holding boxes. Next, we'll set up 4 elven troops, 1 in the Grey Havens, another in Rivendell, another in Lorien, and another in the Woodland Realm. And once again, 5 elves will go into the elf holding box. Next is the Rohirrim. 1 is going to start in Helm's Deep, another in Edoras, and a 3rd in East Temnet. The remaining 5 Rohirrim will go in the Rohirrim holding box. Now we'll take care of the Gondorian troops. 2 are going to go into Minas Tirith. 2 will go into Dal Amroth. And 1 is going to go into Peligir. You'll note that on the map it shows the proper number of starting tokens that have to be placed into each space. The remaining 5 Gondorian forces will go in the Gondorian holding box. Now we're going to place the starting shadow troops. Those are going to go into red locations on the board. So we've placed out a total of 18 shadow troops across the board, according to the table listed on page 5. Now we're going to draw 9 shadow cards, 1 at a time, and we're going to place 1 shadow troop in each of those locations listed. This is going to be the randomizing element to make each game different. So we'll begin by drawing 9 cards. First one is Nir Harad. Next is Dal Guldur. Third is Dunland. Fourth is Dal Guldur. Fifth is Ruin. The 6th is Dal Guldur. The 7th is Nurn. The 8th is in Dunland. And the last one is in Umbar. All right. And the rule book says, note, unlike other pandemic system games, there is no limit to the number of shadow troops that can be in a location in this game. Okay, our next step in the setup is going to be to select our objective cards. One of those cards has to be the Destroy the One Ring. That is a core element in the game. But the remaining cards can either be randomized or, as the rules indicate, we should be using these cards with the black stars, and that makes it a little simpler for our first playthrough. Now in future games, we have a difficulty setting chart, and those levels range between introductory, standard, heroic, epic, and legendary. And that will directly tell us how many objective cards we will have to resolve, and the number of Skies Darkened cards that will be included into the Free People's deck. So for this first game, we're going to be using the cards with the black stars. And what we have to do now is use any setup instructions on those cards and fulfill those. Now, as the example, we have Destroy the One Ring. During setup, it says use Frodo and Sam. So part of the solo rules is Frodo and Sam are always a part of our characters in the solitaire game. Next one is Attain the Blessing of the Elves. It says at setup, place 3 elven troops on this card. So we'll take 3 elven troops out of the supply and place them on the card. So until we can resolve this card, those troops will not be available to us. They're not in the force pool anymore. So in order to complete this, we're going to have a character in Rivendell spend 3 friendship while there's at least 1 other character present. So that'll be fairly straightforward to complete. Our other one is Sauron, your staff is broken. At setup, place 2 additional orcs in Isengard. All right. So in addition to any starting orcs that are in Isengard, we're going to be adding 2 extra there. So they've got a total of 3 there. And our last one is Challenge Sauron. There's no special conditions during setup, but what we need to do is a character will spend an action in North Ithilien to complete this objective when there are at least 2 Rohirrim, 2 Elven, and 3 Gondorian troops present. All right. Now, before we can complete the Destroy the One Ring card, we have to complete the others prior to that. Now it's time to hand out our characters and reference cards. In the solo game, we always have Frodo and Sam set off to the side, and then we're going to select 4 random heroes from amongst those in the group. Now, for the solo game, for our first game, they suggest that we use Merry and Pippin, Éowyn, Legolas, and Gandalf. So we'll be doing that. We've got their tokens on their cards, and then on the card at the bottom, it tells you their starting location. So we'll place those tokens on the starting locations. All right, so in the Shire, we've got Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin. We place Éowyn in Edoras. Legolas will begin in the Woodland Realm. And finally, Gandalf will begin in Tharbad. Now, it should be noted that there are certain objectives that mandate that specific characters be included into our selection of cards. And that's why the objectives are drawn before the characters. In the event that one of those objectives would mandate that a specific character be included, we would take those characters out of the deck, place them out on the board, and then we would fill in the remaining slots with random characters. Now we're going to deal out our player cards, and since we're playing a solitaire game, what we need to do is set aside the 12 Skies Darkened cards. We shuffle the 14 event cards, and then, without looking, select a number of them based on the number of players. And since we're playing a 1-player game, we need 5 events. So we've got our event cards randomly removed, and the other event cards are placed back in the box. Now we're going to shuffle these event cards into the standard deck of 48 cards, and then we'll draw our initial hand of cards. Our initial hand of cards is kept face up, and we end up having 2 cards with Valor, 1 with Friendship, and 1 with Resistance. Now we're going to build the player deck, and we have to decide on a difficulty level. Bringing up the difficulty settings chart, we're going to be using the introductory level for this game, so that means we're going to need 4 Skies Darkened cards. Then we divide the remaining cards into a number of face-down stacks depending upon the difficulty. Since we're using the introductory level, we divide it into 4 stacks. And then we're going to shuffle 1 Skies Darkened card face down into each stack. So we'll give each of these a Skies Darkened card, and then we're going to shuffle those in. So then, after shuffling each of the 4 decks, we simply stack them one on top of another And that forms our draw deck. We place the deck into the draw area and we're ready to start the game. Now in the solo game, we're entitled to be able to take up to 4 actions plus 1 action with Frodo and Sam. And that's how this will work. We can either take the Frodo and Sam activation first, then take our 4 actions with our character, or we can reverse it, so it's our choice. We'll begin with Merry and Pippin. And we've got the solo token on their card. And what I like to do to keep track of how many points that they spend is I simply move that marker on the card to account for a point when they spend a point. And then another one down there, another one down there. And then finally when they spend their last point, I put it on the portrait and I know I've used all 4 of their actions. So the game is now set and we're ready to play, and I think what we're going to do is I'll just walk the viewers through a turn and then you can get the gist of how the sequence of play works. Basically in the order of play, step 1 is to do the 4 actions plus 1 action. So in this case, Merry and Pippin could take their 4 actions first, and then Frodo and Sam could take theirs, or we can reverse that. Next, we're going to draw 2 cards from our deck and add those to our hand. We begin the game with 4 cards, and we have a hand limit of 7. If we ever have more than 7 cards, we're going to have to discard down to that 7 card limit. And finally, for step 3, we're going to be drawing shadow cards, and we draw the number of cards that are listed at the bottom of the threat rate track. At the start of the game, the threat rate track indicates that we have to draw 2 cards during this step of the order of play. As that increases, you'll see that we'll be going up to 3, 4, and possibly 5 cards per turn, and we don't want that threat rate to go up too quickly. The more cards that we have to draw from the shadow deck, the tougher it is on us. Now before we get started, let's take a look at some of the capabilities of our characters. We'll begin with Frodo and Sam. They're going to be starting in the Shire. Now for Frodo and Sam, it says when Frodo travels or takes part in travel, the current player must either spend 1 stealth or roll a search for Frodo's destination. A search is going to consist of using those black search dice, and the shadow player will gain 1 die for each Nazgul in the region and 1 for each army that he has in the space that Frodo moves into. So we want to minimize the amount of search rolls as much as possible. That is for certain. You also have the ability Elrond's Support. Once per turn, when Frodo prepares, if he is at a haven or in a region named on the card, he also gains 1 friendship token from the supply. And then we have Sam's Aid. Whenever a search is rolled, you can spend friendship tokens to ignore the same number of weary or exposed results. So that helps in hiding the fellowship from searches. And finally, we have Put on the Ring. Before a search is rolled, you can ignore all orcs present. If you do, lose 1 hope and shift the Sauron's Eye token to Frodo's region. So it does give us some ability to protect ourselves. Then we have Merry and Pippin. Their first ability is Loyal Friend. As an action, once per turn, they can gain a friendship token from the supply. Then they have the Distract ability. At any time, not an action, use on any player's turn. If there are fewer than 4 Nazgul in Merry and Pippin's region, you can spend 1 friendship token to move up to 2 Nazgul to their region. So you can kind of help Frodo clear a path for him as he heads towards Mount Doom. And then we have Give Us a Song. As an action, if Merry and Pippin are in Frodo's location, you can spend 3 friendship tokens to gain 2 hope. And that's very, very powerful action. Then we have Éowyn. She's going to start in Edoras. She is the shield maiden of Rohan. when Eowyn musters in a Rohan location, you do not need to spend friendship tokens. So that's very powerful. And then she has the unique No Living Man Am I ability. If Eowyn is present when a battle is rolled, remove one Nazgul from her region from the game for each Nazgul result rolled. Do not lose 2 friendly troops. So that's a huge and very powerful and thematic ability. Then we have Legolas. He's going to begin in the Woodland Realm. He has the ability Walk Silently. As an action, once per turn, he can gain a stealth token from the supply. Then he has a very interesting ability called Sure Shot. At any time, not an action, use on any player's turn, he can spend 1 stealth token to remove 1 orc army from Legolas's location or an adjacent location, or to move 1 Nazgul from his region to Mordor. And then he has Keen Sight. Once per turn, when Legolas prepares, look at the top card of the shadow deck. So it gives us some insight as to what would be coming. And finally, we have Gandalf. He has the ability Mithrandir. When Gandalf musters, add up to 2 troops to his location instead of 1. Then he has Shadowfax. When Gandalf travels alone, he may move 2 locations away. He may not use special paths when he does this. So Shadowfax gives him that added mobility. And then we have Light and Flame. If Gandalf is present when a battle is rolled, you may spend a Valor token to change the same number of dice to any results you choose. So it's a pretty powerful military ability. All right, our first consideration is how do we want to handle these objective cards? I think the easiest objective card is more than likely to attain the blessing of the elves. We're going to need to acquire 3 friendship tokens and then have 2 party members in Rivendell. That's going to allow us to place those 3 elves into the supply, and then the player with at least 1 character in Rivendell can gain a friendship token, and we gain a hope. So I think that might be our first objective to work towards. So we'll begin with Merry and Pippin, and I think they're going to use their Loyal Friend ability. So we're going to spend an action to gain a friendship token, and we'll gain a friendship token from the supply. Now in the solitaire game, our cards and our tokens are in a community supply, so we can use those for any character could use them. So in this case now we have these cards and the friendship token we just acquired. Now the list of actions that we can take are clearly pointed out on the actions cards provided. Now for the solitaire game, there is 1 action that we won't need to be taking, and that is the fellowship action. We don't use that because all of our cards are in a community hand. Other than that, all of the other actions are the same as in the standard game. Now I should point out that the tokens, there is no hand limit on tokens. You can have as many of those as you can acquire. However, we are limited to a hand limit of 7 cards. Now there's an action called Prepare, and it says when you're at a haven, you can discard a card to take a token with the same symbol. But in the solo game, the card must match the region. So currently we're in Eriador. So if we have a card that had the Eriador location on it, we'd be able to convert that card into a token of the listed type. In this case, we can't. So I think the best bet for Merry and Pippin will be to move. And I think we'll try to get them closer towards Rivendell and completion of that Attain the Blessing of the Elves card. So we'll have them spend a point, and they're going to move on the map, and we'll have them move from the Shire into Bree. Now, Merry and Pippin could take, with their travel action, they could have taken Frodo and Sam with them, but when they're traveling with Frodo and Sam, that's when that search roll becomes activated. So we have to be careful when we move Frodo and Sam. We don't want to subject them to too many search rolls if we don't need to. We have 2 actions remaining, and I think we're going to have them travel into the space with Gandalf and Tharbad. So we'll move them there. I think they'll take their last action, and they're going to move with Gandalf to Holland. So we'll have them move into Holland, and they're getting close to being at Rivendell, where we can attempt to complete that attain the blessing of the elves objective. Now, we could have taken an action with Frodo and Sam. We've exhausted our 4 actions for Merry and Pippin. We're entitled to take 1 action with Frodo and Sam. But in this case, I don't want to do that. I don't want to travel with them and risk a search against them. So now we move on to step 2, and that's draw 2 cards. We're going to be drawing 2 cards from our Fate of the Fellowship deck, and we'll add those into our hand. We've got Rudauer, which is a resistance card, and we've got an event, Elven Cloaks and Rope. Play at any time, not an action. Select any character. They may travel alone up to 2 times. Do not roll for searches. The character must pay for special paths as usual and may not bring other characters or friendly troops along. Okay, we're going to add that into our hand, and we'll keep that. Those event cards are very handy because they can be played whenever you choose to. All right, now that we've completed step 2 of our order of play, we've drawn our cards. Now we go to step 3, and we're going to draw shadow cards, and this is where the game is going to fight back against us. We begin the step by examining the threat rate track. That tells us the number of these cards we have to resolve. In this case, it's 2. So we'll begin by drawing the top card. Now we examine the card on the draw deck, and that tells us which part of this card we have to resolve. In this case, we've got the eye. We'll be resolving the lower portion of the card. That indicates we're supposed to place a reinforcement in Isengard. And then it says, shift the eye to Frodo's region. If it is already there, roll a search. Okay. So we're going to place a reinforcement in Isengard that moves their total up to 4 there. And then the card says, shift the eye to Frodo's region. Well, it's already in Eriador where Frodo is. And then it says if it's already there, we have to roll a search. So that's what we'll have to do. So we need to roll a search die for each Nazgul that is in Frodo's region and each shadow troop that's in his location. In this case, he's in the Shire. There's no shadow troops there, but we do have 2 Nazgul seeking him out. So we'll have to roll 2 dice. So we'll roll the search dice and see what the results are. All right, we've got these symbols. All right, the left-hand die is weary. We lose 1 hope. The right-hand die is called exposed, and we lose a hope, but we can ignore it if Frodo is in a haven. Well, he is in a haven, the Shire, for right now. So with this roll, we're going to have to lose 1 hope. So at present, we're going to have to lose 1 hope. But Frodo and Sam have a special ability. It's called Sam's Aid. Whenever a search is rolled, you can spend a friendship token to ignore the same number of weary or exposed dice. So in this case, I think we will do that. And we're going to use this Edenwaith card for its friendship ability. We'll use that, and that will go into the discard, and then we can cancel this weary die that we rolled. And that's basically a big part of the game. We're using our cards and our tokens to try to mitigate these negative results that we get from the shadow cards and from different events. So we've resolved our first card. Now we leave these cards in the resolve area, so that tells us how many we've resolved so we don't lose count. We have to resolve 2 of these, so here's the second card. And this one is the red banner. We'll be resolving the upper portion. And what we do there is we examine the locations and the color of the battle line track. In this case, forces in Nurn are going to be moving towards Minas Tirith using the yellow track. So this is what's listed as an advance, and we're going to move every shadow troop shown on the battle line one space forward. Battle lines will start at a red shadow location, and we follow a colored arrow and end at a haven. That's how those will work. So what we do is we find out the destination. In this case, it's Minas Tirith. Then we work backwards using in this case, the yellow arrow, and we're going to move any troop that is in that space towards the destination of Minas Tirith. So we would go back Osgiliath, there's nothing there. North Ithilien, nothing there. Dagorlad, nothing there. And finally in Rhûn, we have troops there, so they're going to move from Rhûn to Dagorlad. And that's how those advancements will work. So we're constantly not only worried about our characters, but we're also looking at the position of these enemy troops and what potential moves could do to us. We don't want them to capture our havens, that is for certain. If they capture a haven, we lose 3 hope. Right now we've only got 6. So once we've resolved the indicated number of shadow cards, we place them in the discard and we move on to our next character. So we move the solo token from Merry and Pippin to Éowyn, and we'll put that in the upper left-hand corner. She has 4 actions and +1 Frodo and Sam action. All right, Éowyn is currently in Edoras. Now we have 5 cards in our hand currently. The hand limit is 7. So if at the end of her turn, when we draw our 2 cards, we would be at our hand maximum at this point. So we might want to consider taking some of those prepare actions, if possible, where we can use the cards and convert them into tokens which don't have a hand limit. Unfortunately, Éowyn's in Rohan. We have no Rohan cards at this point. So I think what she's going to do will probably use her ability to muster. She is at a Rohan muster location in Edoras, and she has a special ability, Shield Maiden of Rohan. When Éowyn musters in a Rohan location, you don't need to spend friendship tokens. Normally you have to spend a friendship token to recruit 1 unit. Well, she doesn't have to, so I think she'll use her first action to recruit a Rohan unit in Edoras. And I think she's going to use that action again, and we'll have her recruit another unit in Edoras. She has 2 actions remaining. I think we'll have her spend 1 action to do a travel action, and she's going to travel from Edoras to Helm's Deep, and she can take as many of those forces or characters with her as she chooses. So she's going to take, I think, all of them. What we're concerned about is any of these forces, enemy forces in Isengard, sortying out and attacking the Fords of Isen, which is one of our recruitment areas. And I think she is going to take her last action and do another move, another travel, and we'll have her move into the Fords of Isen, and she can help to defend that area. All right, we've completed our 4 actions for Éowyn. We do have an action available to us for Frodo and Sam, but I think we are going to pass on that, and we'll just go to step 2 and draw our cards. So we'll draw our 2 cards. First one is a stealth in Ithilien, and the second one is another stealth in Gondor. So we'll add those 2 to our hand total. That gives us a total now of 7 cards in our hand. Now it's our draw shadow cards phase, and once again we're drawing 2 cards. Here's the first one. This one is going to be the lower portion of that card, and we're going to get a reinforcement in Dol Guldur. And that's known as a reinforce. So we're going to place 1 reinforcement in Dol Guldur, and then it says, deploy 3 Nazgul from Mordor to the Eye. If and when Mordor is empty, deploy from the largest groups 1 at a time. If the Eye is in Mordor, recall 3 to Mordor instead. All right, let's place our reinforcement. So they'll gain another reinforcement in Dol Guldur. They've got a total of 5 units in there now. And then we're going to redeploy 3 Nazgul from Mordor to the Eye location. So we'll take 3 of these Nazgul from Mordor and place them into Eriador, where the Eye of Sauron is. All right, so we've got a total of 5 of them hunting Frodo and Sam. And now we have to resolve our second card. All right, this one is going to be an advance, and it's going to be from Umbar to Helm's Deep using the orange track. And incidentally, these cards, as you can see, it shows you the starting point and the destination and where those arrows traverse. In this case, most of them are going through Gondor. So we find our destination. In this case, it's going to be Helm's Deep. And then we go backwards, looking at the orange arrows. So we cycle that through, looking at all the locations, and eventually getting into Umbar. And that will be a valid move there. So the forces in Umbar will move into Harondor. And so you can see there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of things for the player to keep a handle on. It's not only attempting to resolve these objectives, but also the proximity of these enemy armies and Nazgul. So we've completed Eowyn's activation. We'll place the 2 cards that we just resolved in the discard, and we'll move our solo token to Legolas. He's currently in the Woodland Realm. All right, Legolas, I think, is going to begin by using his Walk Silently ability. As an action, once per turn, he can gain a stealth token. So we will do that, and we'll gain a stealth token from the supply and add it to our available tokens. We can only do that once, though, per turn. Now, what we're trying to do now is to solve our first objective. In this case, attain the blessing of the elves. We'll need to have a total of 3 friendship symbols to spend with 2 characters in Rivendell. We're starting to move our forces, our characters, towards Rivendell, but we don't have enough of those friendship tokens at present. I think Legolas will take his second action, and he's going to muster. And we'll have to spend 1 friendship token to do so. That is the problem, but I think it's important to do that. So we're going to spend a friendship token, and we'll take a elf unit from the supply, and we'll place that into the Woodland Realm. We've got 2 armies there now. Now I'm a little concerned. There's a large allotment of troops in Dol Guldur, and they easily could be moving either through Carrick into the Old Forest Road and into the Woodland Realm, or towards southern Mirkwood and moving north. We don't know, but that's a possibility. So I'm trying to prepare some defenses for us. All right, Legolas has 2 actions left, and I'm thinking about moving Legolas with those troops towards southern Mirkwood, where we could maybe attempt to provide a block there against those orcs coming out of Dol Guldur. That might be an option for us. I think we'll do that. We'll spend an action, and we'll move Legolas and the 2 troops into the Old Forest Road, and we'll take his last action and move them into southern Mirkwood. I'm not sure if this is the correct strategy, but we're just learning the game. And incidentally, this is just going to be an introductory game. I'm planning on playing a standard game of this in the future, where we're going to be drafting our characters randomly and our objectives randomly. All right, Legolas has used all of his actions, and now we will draw our cards. Now, so far we've got a total of 7 cards in our hand, so we're going to have to discard down to that level. And we're going to draw the cards. Skies Darken. Uh-oh. And the next card is the Misty Mountains with a stealth token. All right, we're going to have to resolve this Skies Darken card. So let's take a look at that card. It's not going to be good for us. Step 1 is the shadow grows. Increase the threat rate by 1. All right, so we'll move the threat rate up. So the threat rate increases. We're still at a draw of 2 cards, but it's getting closer to 3. All right, step 2 of the Skies Darken card is I See You. If the Eye of Sauron is in Frodo's region, we lose 2 hope. Otherwise, we shift the eye to Frodo's region. Well, unfortunately, the Eye of Sauron is in Eriador where Frodo and Sam are, so we're going to be losing 2 hope. So we're going to move our hope marker down 2. Moves us down to 4. Once again, if we ever get to 0, we go into despair and we've lost the game. All right, step 3 of the card is Under Cover of Darkness. We're going to be adding 3 orcs into South Ithilien. So we'll add 3 shadow armies into South Ithilien, and that's a direct threat to Pelagar. And finally, step 4 is the Danger Intensifies. We're going to shuffle the shadow card discard pile and place it on top of the shadow deck. So that means those 2 cards that we set aside at the beginning during setup, the Drums of War and the Wheels of Saruman, are going to be active into the deck, so we'll take care of that. So we've shuffled our discards and we place them at the top of the deck. This is an important mechanism in these pandemic style games. We don't shuffle the entire deck. We're just shuffling the deck that we're placing on top of it. So it goes to how these forces are going to be moving on the board, and sometimes the repetitive nature of how those forces move. All right, so we've completed our Skies Darken card. That is in the discard now. Now we have drawn this Misty Mountains card, and that's going to put us over the hand limit. So unless we can play some of the cards, like event cards or something, we'll have to make a discard. And I think what we'll do is, rather than lose the card, I think I'm going to play this Elven Cloaks and Rope event. It says play at any time, not as an action. Select any character. They may travel alone up to 2 times. Do not roll for searches. The character must pay for special paths as usual and may not bring other characters or friendly troops along. And we're going to use that to move Frodo and Sam. So we're going to move them twice, and we want to try to get them obviously out of Eriador, where this Shadow's Eye token is, plus the 5 Nazgul. So we'll move them twice. So we'll move them into Bree and into Tharbad. So we're still in Eriador, but at least we can leave Eriador for either Rhudaur or Nidenwaith. And now that we've played that event, we have 6 cards in our hand. We can add this Misty Mountains card that we just gained, and we have room for it. And if things weren't bad enough, now we have to resolve our shadow cards, and we still have to resolve 2 of them. So here's the first one. And this one is going to be the banner at the top, and it'll be an advance from Dal Guldur towards Minas Tirith. And they'll be using that yellow set of arrows. So beginning with Minas Tirith, we backtrack using the yellow arrows, and we move any forces along that track. So we'll move to Osgiliath, North Ithilien. Dagorlad does have some, so they're going to move into North Ithilien. And then we continue. And here's Dal Guldur, and they're going to move into Southern Mirkwood, and we're going to have a battle here. So this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate how a battle works. Now in this case, the shadow forces moved into our space from Dal Guldur into Southern Mirkwood. Now whenever we institute a battle, that moves the Shadow's Eye to that region. It's a way to get that eye away from Frodo and Sam. It's a tactic that we can use. But in this case, the orcs are attacking us, so we don't get that benefit. How this is going to work is the orcs are going to attack, and you get 1 battle die for each army that they have in the region, up to a maximum of 3. And so in this case, they're going to be rolling 3 battle dice, and we'll see what the results are. All right. Those are the results. The first die is a rout die, and that means that the shadow is going to lose 1 army. That goes back into the supply. The next die is Nazgul. If Nazgul are present, remove 2 friendly troops. Otherwise, there is no effect. Well, we've lucked out. There are no Nazgul in Mirkwood at this time, so this die will not apply. Finally, we have this third die, and that is Overrun. We remove a friendly troop. We could ignore it if the battle space was a haven. Well, unfortunately, southern Mirkwood is not a haven, so we're going to lose 1 troop, and that goes back into our elf supply. And that's how a battle works. Now, we have some special abilities that we can do. One of these is Show Valor. After rolling, characters who are present may remove 1 shadow troop for each valor that we spend. So I think we will do that. We're going to spend 2 valor. 2 valors. Those will go into the discard, and we'll be able to remove 2 additional losses for the shadow troops. That's a good play because not only have we removed the shadow troops, but we've cleared out part of our hand. We're down to 5 cards now. Now, we also had the ability to use Fate after rolling. Any characters who are present may re-roll 1 battle die for each resistance token that we use. And that can be tokens or cards. Now, we do have 2 resistance cards, one for Ithilien and one for Redower. We don't have to use, those cards can be used anywhere. The locations are only for special character actions, such as if we were going to do a prepare action. That has to be performed using the card in that indicated space, but not in this case. So we could use one of those cards and re-roll this action that costed us 1 troop. So maybe we'll try that. We'll play this Ithilien card, and that will allow us to re-roll this die. See if we can get a better result. And it actually did. That would have inflicted an additional loss to the orcs. So instead of us losing that troop that we had, it'll inflict another loss on the orcs, and we'll do that. That's the end of the battle. Now, those forces remain engaged. It takes an action for us to actually initiate a battle, but not for the shadow. And now we'll resolve our second shadow card. And this time it's going to be the eye, so we'll be doing the southern portion, and that's going to be adding a reinforcement in Rune. And then it says, shift the eye to Frodo's region. If it is already there, roll a search. Uh-oh. So we'll place the orc reinforcement in Rune, and now we have to resolve a search. This is not going to be good. So we're going to be rolling a number of search dice equal to the number of Nazgul in the province with Frodo, and the number of orc troops in his location. There are none there in Tharbad, but there are 5 Nazgul, so there's going to be 5 dice rolled, and this is not good. Okay, here's the roll. All right, let's see what the results are. All right, we've got 3 of these recall dice that have been rolled. And that means that if Nazgul are present, we move 1 to Mordor. So 3 of them are going to move back to Mordor, and we'll do that. We'll relocate 3 of them back to Mordor. It leaves 2 of them. These other dice now are going to be adverse to us. We have a weary, and we've got an exposed. The weary is going to lose us a hope, and the exposed will lose us a hope because we're not in a haven in this location. So 2 more hope are going to drop. Now normally we have Sam's aid available to us, but we don't have any friendship tokens or cards to play, so we can't mitigate this roll, and we're going to be losing 2 hope. So we lose 2 hope, and Frodo is quickly approaching despair. So as we can see, we would like to get Frodo and Sam out of Eriador and move them into probably Nidenwaith. So there's no Nazgul in that location. However, now in Dunland, there are 3 orcs there, 3 orc armies. Well, next up is going to be Gandalf, and I think we're going to take the Frodo and Sam action first. We'll take care of that. And we're going to have them conduct a travel action, and we'll have them move along this path into Holland. Now, Rhudaur does have 1 Nazgul present, so we're going to have to conduct a search roll there with 1 die. But I think it's worth it because we want to get them out of that high traffic area with the eye symbol and the Nazgul there. So here's the 1 die search roll. And they've rolled a recall. If a Nazgul is present, move it to Mordor. So that worked to our advantage. That gets moved into Mordor. And we've kind of got some safety now for the Frodo and Sam characters. And now it's Gandalf's turn. And I think for his first action, he's going to do a travel action. He's going to move into Rivendell. He's going to take Frodo and Sam with them. And normally that would institute a search roll, but there's no Nazgul in Rhudaur, and there's no enemy troops in Rivendell, so we don't have any dice to roll. We're going to leave Merry and Pippin behind in Holland. All right, for his second action, I think he's going to prepare. And what that says is, at a haven, we can discard a card to take a token of the same symbol. We're at a haven, and we're going to discard, I believe, this Rhudaur card. That matches the province that we're in, and that allows us to exchange this for a token, and that frees up our player hand. And so Gandalf is going to earn us a resistance token, and put that into our supply. Now Gandalf has 2 actions left. I would like to have him muster, but we don't have any friendship tokens to muster with. He would be able to use his special Mithrandir ability. When he musters, he can add up to 2 troops in the location instead of 1, but we don't have the proper tokens or cards. So I think we're going to pass on the other actions for Gandalf, and we'll go to our draw 2 cards step. Now we have room in our hands. We've only got 3 cards in hand. So our first card is a card for Eriador, and the second is for Mordor. Unfortunately, we're not getting many of those friendship symbols. That's what we need to solve our first objective. We need 3 of those. So we add those 2 cards to our hand. We've got a total of 5 cards with 2 tokens. But once again, unfortunately, we don't have any of those friendship symbols, and that's what we need at this point. Now we have to resolve our shadow cards, and we're still resolving 2 of them for the moment. Here's the first one. This is going to be an advance from Dol Guldur to Helm's Deep using the green path. So we're going to locate Helm's Deep, which is located here, and then we backtrack using the green arrows. Nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, and nothing there in Dol Guldur. So that card had no effect on us. And now we'll resolve our second card. And this one is going to be the lower portion of the card, a reinforcement in Dol Guldur. And then we're going to shift the eye to Frodo's region. And if it's already there, we would make a search roll. Well, it's not. Frodo has managed to move into Rhudaur province, so that's good for us. So we're going to place a shadow reinforcement in Dol Guldur, and then the Sauron's eye will move to Frodo's location in Rhudaur. And that completes a full turn of Fate of the Fellowship. And as you can see, there's a lot of action happening in this game. There's many things to keep track of. the location of your characters, their special abilities. Is my hand limit getting close to the being filled up? Where are the shadow armies in proximity to my havens? Where are the Nazgul? And where is Frodo and Sam in relation to Sauron's Eye and the Nazgul? And I have to say, I'm enjoying this game very much. I like the strategy that is involved. It's a pretty deep game, more than I would have suspected, to be perfectly honest. And I'm looking forward to digging into this game a little deeper in the future, where we would examine more of the strategy and we would use randomly drawn characters and randomly drawn objectives. And I think that would be a very fascinating series of videos. So for right now, we have learned how to set up the game and we've played through one full turn with our 4 characters. So I think I'm going to end the video here, and in the future we will pick back up on this game and I'll try to dive more into the strategy elements of the game. But for right now, at least you have a basis of understanding how the game plays. We've gone through searches and battles, and we've used most of the actions available to the characters. So you should have a pretty good idea of how the game plays. And once we incorporate different characters and different objectives into this, the replayability of this game is off the charts. Not only are we starting with 9 different orcs armies in different locations at the start of the game, but with different objectives and different player characters, each game is going to be completely different. So the replayability of this title is awesome. So thanks for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. I hope you enjoyed this preview of Fate of the Fellowship. If you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings, I'm sure you can see the thematic elements that the designer has placed into the game, and I'm very happy with how Matt Leacock has approached this. I especially enjoy the individual abilities of each of the characters. They're very thematic to the book and movie, and you can see how this all kind of ties together to produce an extremely good narrative. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time on the channel. In the future, we will be doing a full playthrough of this game, and like I said, I'll try to get into more of the strategy elements rather than just previewing how the game operates. So I look forward to seeing you again next time on the channel, and in the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and wishing everyone happy gaming and a pleasant evening. Good night.